Doggy Stoic community. This is one of my favorite podcast episodes I've ever done. And the guest is Kimberli Weeks. So you might know her from a podcast with Dylan Jones called Not Truly Aggressive, where they discuss kind of the hotbed topics of the training space. What I loved about this podcast is Kimberli's been training dogs since she was 13 years old. She got her German Shepherd, and that's been her dog of choice until today. She does sport dog training, pet dog training. But I think what makes Kimberli brilliant is she's able to discuss complex topics without having to bicker and argue and name call. She's thoughtful. She presents her ideas, lays them out, and lets you guys, the audience, decide, does this make sense for me or not? On today's episode, we talk about complex topics like punishment, really understanding positive reinforcement and play, and lastly, what it takes to raise a good dog, a good puppy. Stay tuned and leave a comment. All right, Doggy Stoic community. So a few weeks ago, maybe a little bit over 4 weeks ago, I had Dylan Jones on the podcast, and that was coming on the heels of the controversy in the dog training space. And it seems like every week, there's something new in the space for us to talk about. But I did a post after that, right? I got a lot of new followers. And I said, this podcast is for the community. Who should I have on? And quite a few people recommended Kimberli Weeks from Daredevil Dog Training. So I was like, okay. And that's, if you guys don't know, they have a podcast. Kimberli is Dylan's co-host on Not Truly Aggressive. So I was like, all right, let's do it. So here we are. I'm really, really looking forward to this podcast. It's not going to be, Kimberli, tell me about your relationship with Dylan, or like how you guys started the podcast, or what Not Truly Aggressive is all about. We'll cover some of those things. But I want to learn more about Kimberli, more about her journey. I believe you come from kind of, a protection dog, a working dog space, but you do a lot of pet dog stuff. So without further ado, I kind of teed it up there and gave like the frame for what we're going to discuss over the next 60 to 90 minutes. Kimberli, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Who do we have here joining you and joining us for the podcast?
This is Ferret, my Chihuahua. She runs the household full of German Shepherds. She's the queen bee. So.
And you've always had Chihuahuas?
No, actually, she's my first one, 3 years old. So yeah, I've actually only had German Shepherds my entire life. But one of my friends from the sport world, she always had her Chihuahua sidekicks, and I was like, all right, I think I need one of those, which is funny because she totally brings out my fur mommy side. It's kind of nice to have a dog with zero expectations. So I actually kind of got her a little bit closer to 4-ish months, because one of my club members at the time actually had her. She's the one who wanted her, and I was kind of like, oh, I might kind of want one, but I wasn't sold on the idea. And then she kind of ended up not getting along with that person's other dogs. The other dogs basically thought she was a rodent. So then she ended up coming to me, and I fell deeply in love with her, and here we are. So
how old is she now?
She just turned 3. Yeah, or no. Let's see. She'll be 4. Is that right? Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, she'll be 4 in end of March. So, yeah.
Let me ask you. I was going to ask you kind of a little bit about you, and I'll get into that in a second. But if you want, I always ask this on every podcast. What's your guide to raising a good puppy? Michael Ellis says, I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of kind of fixing it on the back of a
Yeah.
What's raising a good puppy, right? We always get into, here's how you punish bad behaviors, here's how you stop this. But if you raise a good dog, I feel like sometimes you just get a really, really good dog. You don't have to do much punishment or change of behavior at all. What's your raising a good puppy guide the Kimberli Weeks way?
Yeah, that's a good question. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself, of course. I think coming from a sport background, a lot of the way that I raise my young dogs is kind of informed by that and my goals with them. And sometimes starting with a good genetic template, which is what we try to do, in the sport and working dog community. Sometimes it's just not messing it up. I find a lot of people almost sometimes do too much, which that like I have a board and train right now on the pet side of things where the mom is like almost over involved with the puppy and kind of blocking the puppy from just having like working through emotions herself. So like puppy will get a little bit startled and the mom will kind of like swoop in and be like, oh, it's okay, you know. And so sometimes it's like not messing with the puppies and letting them just have their emotional experiences, but being there as a secure base to support them and model good behavior for them almost, or like sort of co-regulation, if you will. But like more so for me, I think like the sort of more checkbox style goals, obviously the socialization and just exposure and all that good stuff, but then also setting up my different sort of pieces of the communication system that I want for the dog. So installing a marker system, that's kind of like an obvious one. Showing them, like I definitely want to use some version of negative reinforcement in learning fairly early on. I kind of want to set the dog's relationship with pressure, and I want to be involved with that and make sure that they understand, you know, negative reinforcement, that they can turn off pressure, they can work to solve the puzzle, sort of in gamified ways, especially with young dogs. Ideally, that's for me. I like to do it mostly in gamified ways, even in older dogs, but again, especially the puppies. And then also, I think something that people are a little bit afraid of sometimes, especially in the working community, because we're like, oh, we don't want to squash drive. I definitely will introduce the idea of punishment to a puppy, and that punishment doesn't need to be harsh. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. But even, I don't know, the puppy, you know, let's say they're kind of at the age where they're like 5-6 months old. They're starting to have some control over their behavior. I will tell them like, hey, you're not allowed to bite me anymore because I know that I'm giving you all these other outlets. You do have the opportunity to express your prey drive in other ways. And I will punish them for biting skin, which I was sort of afraid to do that for a long time because it's like, oh, but we want these dogs to eventually be comfortable biting people, right? Essentially, or human-shaped tug toys at the very least. So yeah, I kind of am looking to find situations where I can gas the puppy up, give them opportunities to, you know, kind of increase arousal through positive and negative reinforcement, but then also show them how to decrease arousal or stop certain behaviors through punishment. And then there's obviously other things that go into sort of teaching a puppy to emotionally regulate, but that's kind of my biggest goal is creating a clear-headed puppy who can express their full range of emotions and work within that. Because especially for me in sport, I'm going to want both ends of that spectrum, like a really good dog to chill with and in the house, and a dog that can think in really high arousal and drive states.
For you guys listening, I love this. I'm taking notes. So turn off pressure within play. So those are 1 and 2, like kind of teach play, but turn off pressure. Punishment to the puppy. I have a question, especially when they could have control over their behavior, and then co-regulate, kind of letting the dog process. What comes to mind is actually I have a really confident dog that if you met him on day 1 when he came here, you wouldn't have thought so. And a lot of that was just letting him co-regulate. So his name's Pax. He's like a 12-pound Cavapoo. Really high drive dog. You would think this would be a Cavapoo.
People underestimate the little dogs. Like, they can be spicy.
Insane. Like,
yeah,
off the charts compared to the little pitty I have here. But I remember on day 1 or day 2, so I put long lines on the puppies, and we just go for a walk in nature. And sometimes there's dogs barking through windows. And it got him startled, and he turned and he booked it back to his safest space, which is my kennel. And like this is, I think, where a lot of people, owners, typically will be like, oh my God, they'll pick their dog up, they'll pet on him. And all I did was step on the line, and Kimberly just said this, model the behavior you want to see. Like, I didn't say anything to them. I just wanted him to see, like, dude, that's not a big deal. You're going to see that a lot in life. So that was the co-regulate. But Kimberly, I need your help with something. This has been like I'm stuck between like a rock and a hard place. So the podcast is so cool because I it's not that I like it's learning, but it's learning through discussion.
Yeah.
And conditioned punishers. So there's like this whole group. I'm not going to tell you which side I'm on. There's this whole group that's a conditioned punisher, right? Side, and then there's this whole group that no conditioned punisher. And basically, for you guys listening, if you don't know, conditioned punisher is basically you teach the dog in a low arousal state any word that precedes a punishment event. We're not going to get exactly into a punishment event right now. And then others just no word, just a punishment event. Where do you stand on conditioned punishers? And just talk me through how you think about punishment in general.
Yeah, I definitely use a conditioned punisher. Like, I want to announce the punishment in, I would say, 99% of circumstances. That said, I'm not conditioning my punisher in a vacuum, right? So, like, I will wait for the dog to do something I don't like and then step in and interrupt it. I also think this is a little bit of a side tangent, but it's not impossible to condition a punisher in a high arousal circumstance as well. It just tends to be harder because you have to interrupt that arousal, and that's where, honestly, people struggle, and like for good reason. That is hard to do, and the dog may or may not always be capable of it at that moment. And
well, you can condition it with like a dog running in nature trying to eat poop.
Yes, exactly. Something that simple.
Is that high arousal? Is that low arousal? Like, it's hard to say.
Right.
But you could. It's not like you're doing it at home in a corner where there's no sound.
Correct. Yep. So yeah, not to like pick on that too much, but I think sometimes people hear that and they're looking for this like perfect situation to condition it in low arousal, and it's like you don't have to be so like anal about it. But yeah, so I like to announce the punishment. I do, especially for the pet dogs. I want the dog to know that it's coming from the human, because I think a lot of dog problems come from the fact that the dogs just don't realize that they can be stopped. That mom and dad can be like, hey, no, that's off the table. We're not doing that anymore, and stop that behavior. So I do want them to understand, hey, it's the human, it's your parent telling you, hey, that's an off limit behavior. And I think that's an important relationship shift for a lot of pet dogs, because again, people just don't know how to effectively stop their dogs. They're accidentally pumping them up for behavior. Like, this is how leash reactivity, even pulling on leash, like even not even like problem behaviors, just pulling on leash. There are so many dogs that are convinced that pulling on the leash is what solves their problem, and people just don't know how to stop that. So for me, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm announcing the punishment, is because I want ultimately verbal control over the dog, and I don't want to be using the tools as a crutch, right? Like, ultimately, if we have everything sort of set up correctly, the tool that we choose to use is so very long term and more of like a logistics decision than a decision based on like principle, if that makes sense. So the times that I can think that I might not announce punishment would be something where I do actually want the dog to think like, this is a hot stove,
right?
And I'm never going to want any interaction around that thing. So like counter surfing, really obvious one, where I don't mind, and in fact kind of want the dog to think like, hey, you touched something very hot and you don't want to touch it again. That I will never have to have the dog interact with the counter. So behaviors like that are kind of just like one shot, very black and white, oftentimes safety issues too. Again, a counter surfing is the easy one. Dog gets into a back and poisons itself, shit like that. But yeah, what was the other half of your question? I feel like I kind of got off on a tangent and forgot what the other half was.
No, This is perfect. And the reason I asked this, so Larry Crone recommended anyone who's in the Florida area go to a Fabian Robinson seminar. He's here in like Jupiter area. So I was like, okay, I'm like an hour away. Why wouldn't I go? And Fabian's much more of a tracking competition sports trainer, phenomenal trainer. And I got lucky. I had him on the show before I went. And he had like this, you could see like my wheels spinning during the podcast. If you should go listen to Fabian Robinson. It might have been on my Happy Go Lucky channel before I created Doggy Stoic. But he said he doesn't want negative associations with him. So all of his punishments, he doesn't mark them. It's he this like expression. He's like, dog goes, reacts towards the dog, hits the end of the line, and he's like standing there like, like that meme. And it got me spinning. Like, I agree. I don't really want the dog to see me as a negative. But at the same time, I do want the dog to know I personally disapprove of that decision. It's not that you're going to go say hi to the dog and that dog has some kind of superstitious association. I want you to know, and I eventually want your owners to tell you, I don't approve of that choice. And like, I guess this is where it's tough. Like if you have pet dog owners versus working dogs, right? But I only train pet dogs. So I'm like, I want that the owner to say, no, don't do that. And the second thing, and I'll let you rock on this, is months later, I saw a video of Michael Ellis talking about how when you condition a punisher, this is on the Michael Ellis School on Instagram, you actually can really decrease the intensity with which you use the punishment event after, because the event has already kind of commenced, so to speak. So I was like, oh, that's really cool too.
Yeah, and I think like to Michael's point, like I think that's where people like misunderstand punishment, that it doesn't have to be harsh. Like once you do, I mean, it's the same learning principles apply to both reinforcement and punishment. We all know this with a clicker, right? You go click, treat, click, treat, click, treat. And enough times you go click and the dog's eyes dilate, right? Like he feels reinforced just from hearing that click. And we could kind of get away with, usually there's reasons we don't want to do this, but we could get away with not really paying the dog again for that click. And it would retain a decent amount of the properties of that positive reinforcement. And the same is true of punishment. So that I think is extremely valuable. It allows us to be a little bit softer handed, and then also have our dogs completely off leash, completely like free, and be able to interrupt behavior with just our voice. I think that allows for an immense range of possibilities to increase the overall well-being in a dog's life. So I think that value cannot be overstated. It's interesting to Fabian's point. I think that is a little bit of there's certain sort of like traditions in sport that I think definitely have like a grain of truth or even more than a grain, right? But have foundation in a good thought, but sometimes get almost a little bit overblown or too far. So like that to me is one of those like self-discovery things where I can definitely, not off the top of my head, but I could think of situations where I want the dog to sort of self-discover, like, oh, I didn't listen to this cue, or I tried something and it didn't work. Like the environment maybe punished me. And I'm sure and like actually tracking, I think is probably a good example of that at times. That it gets to a little bit more advanced tracking. I think most people don't really need to play with punishment until they've figured out sort of the basics of tracking. But you have to be very, very certain where your track is and all this other stuff. But to me, that's a little bit of a shallow view on how dogs are capable of relating and capable of contextualizing our different sides of the relationship, right? So I don't think because, and like that's a little bit of a sort of frustrating conflation of punishment, meaning that it has to be this like permanent rupture in our relationship where the dog has to look at me as the bad guy if I'm being the punisher. And I don't think that's true. I think people can definitely misuse punishment in that way, or aversives generally. Like I even hesitate to call it punishment. This is where I struggle with the language, right? Because it's like people are using aversives thinking they're doing punishment, but they're not actually, right? So like I'll call it punishment for the sake of this discussion. But I I think a lot of people are creating that situation where the dog is looking at them like, oh shit, like something went really wrong here. It doesn't feel contingent. It doesn't feel fair. And it does cause a break in trust and a break in that relationship. But that's not really proper punishment. Like it's not a given that punishment has to be delivered in that way. So even with, like back to the puppy discussion, I can absolutely go like, hey dude, knock that off. Give a little punishment event, scold the puppy, kind of act like be a little bit performative with my social pressure. And they can go like, oh, it's off limits. Okay, gotcha. And then we reconcile and then go back to what we were doing. The puppy has no fear, no avoidance. If they do, I have to examine and figure out what I did wrong, right? And that,
which is okay.
Like, yeah, like that can happen, but that doesn't mean, what's that?
We need to give a little bit more grace to
yes.
good trainers to also say like, okay, like that. Ooh, okay, I delivered the punishment. It was fair and contingent, but how that dog, that puppy interpreted it wasn't my intention. Now I have to go back to the drawing board. Dude, this is a live.
Sometimes we think they're focusing on one thing and their attention wasn't even there. And so they think like, oh, like I was intending to punish them for pulling on the leash or I don't know, pick whatever behavior, right? Or jumping. But in their head, they were like focusing on the fact that they were, I don't know, going after the toy that you were holding or something like that, right? Like there's just a misunderstanding. And that's what we need to clarify for the dog over repetition. So I think that's a really, really good point that people get kind of freaked out if they see a little bit of confusion after the punishment event, but that doesn't mean that you're completely fucked or that the dog thinks you're a bad guy now and you can never recover them, right? Like they are more resilient and plastic than that. And
and that's why the reconcile phase, which isn't just like a petting on the head, the reconcile phase is super important to like kind of wherever that puppy took it. Let's say this is our relationship equilibrium. This is when the puppy loves us like peak. And then the punishment, how do we get it back to say, hey, let's not stay and live in this place in perpetuity. Let's
get space. Yep, absolutely.
Can I ask you, this with some guests, I brought it up a few times, but mixed responses, but I think you'll understand this and probably appreciate it more. So there was this punishment video, paws and sniffs, that just went absolutely viral.
Was that like 2 weeks ago? Was that
2
dude?
weeks ago, yeah.
Okay. I can never remember social media handles, but yeah.
And honestly, if I didn't have to like do social media for my business, it wouldn't be on my phone. It's I used to think it was like industry specific. I just think in and of itself, it's the craziest.
Yeah.
It's cancer for our society, for our minds, basically. But anyway, anyway,
I think we haven't. Yeah, no, like we haven't figured out how to use it appropriately. Like our brains are not built for it, and it does not go well 99% of the time. So like it could be great to be like, oh, we could connect on this podcast and be educational, but then it very quickly devolved.
Literally, when people in the arena start yelling and throwing,
yes,
Rogan calls it monkeys throwing feces at each other. Well, this is going to be a good example of that. So Kimberly's and most people's contingent and fair, right? And then you announce the punishment. So this trainer, he has this aggressive dog. He does pack walks with a bunch of dogs to kind of rehabilitate dogs, kind of socialize them, get them back to neutral. This dog has been with him for a while, is on an e-collar. And there's going to be right and wrong here, I think. But I'm curious to hear yours. You saw the video, right?
To be honest, I didn't actually watch it. I watched his apology video. I never actually went back and watched the original.
I'll describe.
Yeah.
So anyway, like 20 yards away, that dog attacks another dog. He marks it with a no. In a really solid interrupter. No one could be watching that video and say that didn't interrupt the behavior.
Okay.
That dog stopped, turned, and came back. He had a lot of e-collars. Like sometimes when you have a pack walk, he couldn't find the right one. He eventually, I think he might have zapped the wrong dog. Then he found the right e-collar, zapped the dog. The dog kind of submitted, laid on the side, and then he gave it some pretty strong corrections. And the dog's reaction after the punisher was announced was like, to the perception of the eye, was like, this guy's kind of bullying me, right? 10 seconds ago, that dog was confident enough to bite another dog. But then it submitted, and you could see the no interrupted. Social media went nuts, man. They called him an abuser. They called animal control to his house. Even balanced trainers were like demanding apology videos. And I thought it was a bit unfair because, yes, it was definitely contingent, right? The dog knew the punishment was for the bite, for the aggression on the other dog. Was it fair? Was it over the top? You know, I think there's debate there. I would say if you poll people, 98% would say it was too much. What are your thoughts? And I guess since you didn't see the video, what are your, because you live in this world of, you know, I mean, Dylan gets so much backlash for like the 2-finger swat on Breezy. What are your thoughts in general on any of it? You could take this in any direction you want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is an interesting. It's a difficult conversation to have because there's a lot of assumptions that you sort, or like this is where social media is hard, right? Because when we're talking to people on social media, there's no context how that person acts the other, 23 hours, 57 minutes. And it's, like it's a 2-3 minute video and we're getting such a snippet. And so it's like that might have been too much and he might be an abusive dude, but also that could have been him venting a little bit onto his dog and he normally doesn't do that. Like that's a very out of the blue thing for him. And we kind of don't know that, right? And when we're having discussions with people debating these things, you just lose so much nuance, right? So like that's always the caveat, not to be like wishy-washy on it, but I think like for me, my kind of overall determination or verdict on that video would be, and more generally speaking in punishment, like he gave the punishment marker. Did the dog feel punished enough to avoid doing that behavior next time? And that's the call that we're having to make in that moment. So if you have a really strong conditioned punisher, the dog might have felt punished. I mean, back to the clicker, right? Like click, eyes light up. We can kind of assume that the dog is having a certain emotional experience based on their body language, et cetera, et cetera. Same is true in reverse for punishment. So if we go no, and the dog looks like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I lost control for a moment, wasn't thinking clearly, wasn't being careful about my behavior, we're kind of making a judgment call in that moment. Okay, was that enough? The emotional experience of the dog, was that aversive enough to cause him to change his behavior in the future? And this is also assuming that the dog is capable, which I am going to make that assumption given that the dog was having this pet. Like it sounds like there were foundational pieces that it looks like the dog was able to change that behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so we're making a judgment call in that moment. And that is really, really easy in hindsight to be like, oh, that was too much. Like objectively, looking back at the video, it sounds like it was too much. It sounds like the dog had already been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And we probably could have just reconciled and moved on. But that trainer in that moment made a call with what sounds like a very dangerous behavior, probably got this dog in trouble with his family, like probably, like Dylan says, high stakes, right? And he made the judgment call to go a little bit harder on the dog. And I don't think there's like we can objectively say that was a bad move. And I think it's okay to socially punish that. And when I watched his apology video, I was telling one of my friends, who were talking about it, because she sent it to me and she was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was like, dude, that was probably the best apology video I've ever seen on social media. He took accountability. He said what he'd change and do better next time, like admitted fault, and then said like, hey, I'm going to learn from this and do better. So when we're using social punishment on social media, the goal should not be to just dogpile for dogpile's sake and to make us feel better, because there is a little bit of like social reward to punishing people for bad behavior. Like, kind of can't get around that. But we need to be in control of ourselves enough to go, okay, we caused the behavior change that we were looking for. Now it's time to reconcile with that person, go back to baseline, right? And social media, unfortunately, tends to hold on. Like, that guy will probably get hate mail like 2 years down the road when someone stumbles upon that video or whatever, right? I think that's unfortunate. And in terms of like level of infraction, like, again, to me, if the social punishment was effective it is an infraction, but probably on scale, a relatively minor one. Like, again, it's never appropriate to vent onto dogs. However, that's very, very different from malicious, like, think of, plug in whatever really abusive, behavior.
Consistent, repeated, intentional.
Yes. And without any holding in mind of the dog's welfare, or even, like, again, it sounds like this dude was at least trying to keep the dog's well-being front of mind. That, like, we need to reward successive approximation as well, right? In social behavior. Yes. And I think as people experiment with use of aversives in dog training, unfortunately, there are going to be times where you're like, oh, that was a little too much. I mean, we do this with humans all the time, right? Like, you go, oh, sorry, I scolded you a little bit too hard for this thing that I thought you did. And then we realize, like, oh, actually it was this or that. And we're able to reconcile and realize, like, okay, we can kind of hash out and come to not even compromise, but like an understanding.
Isn't that what parole is by some like kind of?
Yeah. And I think, like, humans are obviously more complicated, and it's harder to be black and white on that kind of stuff. But especially with dogs, like, they are forgiving enough to go, that was a little too hard, buddy. I maybe went 20% too hard. And in that moment, it might have actually been abusive, but that doesn't mean that your entire relationship with the dog or the person is abusive. Like, I think a lot of us at times participate in behavior that in hindsight was like, oh, that was abusive. Because, like, I think, again, I'm going to butcher this quote, but J. Jack says that, like, abuse is going past what the dog would need to quit that behavior. And that's going to happen. So we're probably engaging in some abusive behavior to our spouses, to our friends, a bad day. And hopefully those friends or those spouses can kind of punish us for that behavior or whatever the sort of consequence is. And we can go, oh, I should change that behavior and do better. Like, this is the process of maturity. Children are abusive to each other constantly, and hopefully they learn to do better. And again, I'm kind of using this term abuse loosely, just in the definition of, like, too much, but that doesn't imply that you are a shitty person on the whole and are irredeemable. And I think people want to sort of have this black and white idea of, like, you're a bad person. And this is a whole philosophical discussion, right? But we all have bad parts of us. That humanity is the idea of we're constantly trying to get better and get a hold of that, and not allow those sort of, I don't even say like instinctual tendencies, but like, we're not allowing those negative antisocial aspects of us to rear their ugly head, right? So anyway, that gets into a whole other facet of, like, human behavior, but I do think that is a very difficult intersection when it comes to, okay, we are the caretakers of these animals. We're going to make mistakes. And as advocates for use of aversives in training, I think we have to acknowledge that we're going to make mistakes, because it's disingenuous, and I think turns people off when you try to imply that there's never issues with the use of aversives. It's also disingenuous to say there's never issues with use of positive reinforcement, right? Like, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. as long as you learn and grow from them. So there are definitely people out there that should never have animals again. Like there's been an upsetting case recently in the German Shepherd world where it was like pathological neglect, abuse, dogs dying in horrible conditions. I hope that person never touches a dog again.
Right.
And if horrible things happen to her, right? But that on scale is very, very different than, oops, I went to 100 on the electric and that was way too much because I kind of panicked or had a moment where I was really frustrated or whatever, right? Like it's different than months of continued neglect and abuse to the point where the condition of these dogs is pretty horrendous.
How is that not understood yet? Like I feel like
human nature.
But did you ever watch Emeril Lagasse? I'm gonna break. Oh man, you guys listen. This is a '90s cook show.
Okay.
So we need to talk like the concept, and we know this with like I don't know if you bake or cook, or I love cooking. So like
my version of cooking is like toast with butter. So
okay.
I have one skill in my life, and it is not cooking.
Experience matters. The whole point of that is experience matters. So you could have chefs and they're following a recipe, right? But you have these ingredients, you have tomatoes, you have cucumber, you have bananas, whatever you're making. Bananas have different ripening points, right? So riper bananas are sweeter. So if you have an experienced chef, these are sweet, these are ripe and sweet bananas, and we got them from this place. So we need to add a little bit less sugar, right? Whereas a new chef, he's not like he's a bad chef, he's trying or she's trying. He's like, I'm just going to, it says 1 cup, I'll put 1 cup. And then the recipe is like too much. Wow, that's way too sweet. It's experience, right? Some things you can't be taught by the recipe. So like, do aversives matter? Of course aversives, you need to use them and you need to use them properly. Positive reinforcement, of course. But knowing like how Jay, because he's trained thousands of dogs, Ivan, Larry, whoever has experience, whoever's your like more, I call Larry Cronin Morpheus of the dog training space. That experience, that touch to know, I've seen this dog before. Oh, that no, and just a little bit of spatial pressure is actually enough. And overdoing it, overcorrecting it might even take away from that moment. That's experience. And on my podcast, I said,
that's actually a great analogy. Yeah.
What are we trying to do to these? This is a person clearly trying to be a good trainer. Look at that apology video. Just pull them aside, have a conversation. And that, I'll dovetail this if you want to have a comment on this. That was my problem with Robert and Dylan. To call Dylan a cancer of the dog training space? Are you fucking kidding? Now you could message him and say, hey, like some of these people you're going after are like, these are good people, like they're good trainers. But to say he's a cancer to society and then not even name his name, that's so lame. That's such a lame approach to how you call someone out.
And again, it's just this like very extremist, black and white, reactive thinking. And I think like exactly to your point, pull that person aside and talk to them. Like I've had many conversations with Dylan about, I don't love his use of homophobic slurs. Like I don't love the stray bullets. And we've had respectful discussions about that. And I think his tactics could be better. And he's had other trainers that he respects have discussions about that. And he's an adult that can make his own decisions. And I respect that. Like it doesn't mean we have to be all in or all out, right? Like if I get flack for associating with Dylan, it's like, okay, but sort of, and like part of my motivation for starting the podcast was Dylan had a lot of like short form or like monologue videos, and I saw certain things that he was saying where I was like, hey, I think this could use clarification, because you kind of have this audience in your head that you're speaking to, but I know this particular audience, which was a little bit more like the sport trainers who are kind of trying to figure out and piece together, they're coming from a completely different perspective and hearing this certain tidbit on differential reinforcement or, pick whatever. And I was like, let's have a long form conversation about that where we can kind of dissect what you really mean in depth and in detail. And I don't think that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater with with that stuff because it like objectively has been super helpful to a lot of dogs and people. So I can disagree with one aspect of his behavior, and that doesn't, like, me having a conversation with him doesn't condone that. And I think people want to lump that together and be like, oh, you condone all of his behavior. And it's like, no, he's an adult human that can make his own choices. I have no control over him. But I think there's certain things he brings to the table that are worth fleshing out, you know? And I think that people want to categorize people that way, right? Like, I'm sure there's things that I do that bother the fuck out of people. And that's fine. Like, they can either choose to continue to have a relationship with me or go, it's not worth it. That's kind of crossing a line for me or a personal boundary. That's their prerogative. But it's not like another person could have a completely different experience, and that's also not wrong. Like, all of these subjective emotional experiences can't be put into these black and white categories the way that people kind of want to on social media. Like, Robert's opinion could very well be like, Dylan's a cancer, but like, that doesn't mean that everybody who associates with Dylan is a complete piece of shit. And I can't, you know what I mean? Like, people want to make that lumping, and that's what's always super, super frustrating to me, because I'm like, it's so myopic and it's so black and white thinking, and I'm just kind of like, all right, man, like, do better.
What or who shaped your training philosophy? Like, take us back to how like your training evolved over the years.
So, like, quick backstory on me. So I actually started, jumped right into Schutzen as a kid. My family was not, they were not animal lovers at all. I got the random mutation that made me an animal lover. And I like did my own research, liked German Shepherds, kind of liked the ethos of them. I was 13 when I got my first dog, and like went to club, did all the things. So like, have only ever had, before the Chihuahua, I've only ever had sport dogs. Like, I've never had just a pet dog. So anyway, so very early on, my influence, I actually remember like when DVDs were still a thing, like there weren't online programs. My club training director at the time was like, here's DVD, and it was Ivan's Play DVD. Like, I think it was like a 2 or 4 part series.
When was this? Like, was this like 2010-ish?
Yeah, 2010. Yeah, about around that time frame.
It was a DVD.
Yes. Yep.
Crazy. Who even has a
Back
DVD
in the day.
player? Leave a comment if you still have a DVD player in your house.
Yeah, for real. I think I had. Yeah, I was like, "Where's the DVD drive?" Like, got to do a backflip recently, and I'm like, "This is weird." And that's how old I am, which is pretty pathetic. But I'm like 30, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so old." The actual middle-aged people are gonna laugh at that, but they're like, "We remember VCRs." Yeah. But yeah, so I'm in very early on. What's that?
And cassette tapes.
Cassette tape. Yeah, exactly. So very early on, Ivan was one of the influence, just in terms, like, I think he influenced the sport world a lot more than people sort of realize, as we were kind of in that era where people were starting to use, and a lot of European trainers as well. Like, it wasn't just Ivan, but he was kind of the most visible and the biggest proponent for play, and like what I would say is kind of like modern balanced dog training. So that was a big influence. Like, it's hard as a kid because I didn't have access to like traveling to other trainers, so it was a little bit in my bubble of the local trainers, which were not the best oftentimes.
Were you the one? Were you like a teenager playing with your German Shepherd, following these like protocols, and then like everyone's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, actually, I remember I like brought a clicker to club one time, and people were like, "Dude, what the fuck?" Like, I got bullied quite a bit by the adults, which is a whole nother fucking topic.
Were they yanking, cranking? What were they doing?
Yeah. It was the kind of thing of like a lot of yank and crank, just bad use of aversives, and then they did use toys. But it was very much just like toss the dog the ball, let them chew. I mean, like, they're good German Shepherds that you can kind of get away with that. Like, put a bunch of pressure on them, give them the ball, the dog's like stress relief. But it's not.
the ball's a reinforcer. It's not play.
Yeah, exactly. It's not real play. So it was a lot of that kind of stuff. Like the training director at the time was, in his 60s, very like, and I don't think people realize too, Schutzen didn't get to the States until the 80s. So the people that, like, he was the first wave of people doing Schutzen in America, and it was not finessed at all. So he like made the world team, and I don't want to discount like making the world team is still cool, but it wasn't. He made the world team in the year I was born, and then 15, 20 years later was like, well, not even, I guess, but like 10, 15 years later was like, because I made the world team, you need to listen to me. And it's like, hey, dude, like this is a quickly evolving, right. Like now, even like 40, 50 years later, it's insane how much has changed since the 80s. And it's been interesting to see that evolution since, 2008, 2010, when I got into it. There's been a massive shift. And so like that was already happening kind of in that time period.
Were they using
so I got into a lot of battles.
Were they using e-collars in the 80s?
I think so. Well, in the 80s, actually, I don't know. Definitely, there were some people that were using them when I started, but again, was not super sophisticated. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it was a lot of like high level e-collar for outs and stuff like that. Sure. But yeah, no one was.
What do you think about? I don't think it's just Shield, but like Shield comes to mind. Activation using the e-collar. Shield K9 is what I'm talking about. Activation, right? Like, so we think of pressure, and like most people think of e-collars like the stop a behavior, the kind of an aversive, and maybe there's like that low stim conditioning phase. But I've seen it. I don't participate in the sport dog world, so I don't know. Some people use pressure, not just on the e-collar, with the leash sometimes, to activate, to create drive. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it is pretty like fundamental truth that negative reinforcement either sustains or increases arousal. So use of negative reinforcement in sport dog training is a super effective way to motivate the dog, like that it like reinforcement, right? Like we're increasing the probability and likelihood that a dog will perform a certain behavior. And oftentimes like e-collar, pinch collar are kind of getting into the dog's nerves in sort of the right way, like almost irritating them a little bit, but like in a productive, like, yeah, exactly. Like even like doing bite work on pinch collars, right? Where it's like the dog is feeling pretty spicy. And that can be super, super useful. I think where the real sort of debate is and where people get kind of tangled is backwards versus forwards conditioning, which I'm definitely a proponent of forward conditioning. I think
people that are listening, you want to
yeah. So let's use sit as an example. Tell the dog sit. He doesn't do it. I like pop on the leash upwards, or again, choose your tool. It's a little bit arbitrary, but I help the dog into a sit with some form of pressure. Whereas backwards conditioning would be starting with pressure and then saying sit. And I think, I honestly think that backwards conditioning came about, and the low stim conditioning came about as a reaction to bad e-collar use. And I get it. Like, I get why Larry is like traumatized by really bad e-collar use from, the 90s and the early 2000s. And I think low stim conditioning was a way to do something different. And I kind of wonder, like I can't speak, I don't actually know, but I wonder if the backwards conditioning wasn't even necessarily an intended decision, but more so just like, I want to use e-collar in what feels like a more ethical way to me. And then the way to sort of solve that problem is like, okay, let's let the dog feel this for however many number of repetitions so that you can kind of see that the dog is not having a bad reaction to it. And then you feel comfortable to start to introduce the command. But I think a lot of people, my guess is, and again, like none of this is substantiated claims, right? But my guess is that when it first started coming about, people were going sit and then tapping the dog on the e-collar on, like, let's say a 30 out of 100, and the dog started, and then weren't helping the dog to actually get into a sit. And you go sit and the dog has bad reaction because in fact, what you've done is classically conditioned sit to mean you've made it a conditioned aversive, right? So you say sit and the dog's like, oh shit, I'm about to get tapped with the electric on a pretty aversive level. And my guess is that the low stim conditioning was an attempt or a reaction to sort of solve that problem. But in fact, in my opinion, the solution to that is to go sit and then gently help the dog with light leash pressure, light electric, whatever. Like you can, even layer some e-collar over the leash, whatever it is, but help the dog to solve the problem. So I mentioned even with puppy raising, right? Like I want the dog to have a certain relationship with pressure. And when I am asking for a behavior, I want the dog to work to solve that problem without putting them into panic. Like there does need to be a sense of urgency. Like they need to be motivated to turn off the pressure. But they shouldn't be like up here, right? And so again, I don't know for sure, but that's my guess is where that low stim conditioning sort of came from, and then that kind of like now we have all of the different sort of camps that go along with that. So that's kind of like to me. There's almost go ahead.
There's a lot of different roads the stim conditioning goes because you brought up.
It's almost hard to talk about it because people mean like 20 different things when they say low stim conditioning as well.
Can I tell you where my mind went? And I've only seen it a few times. Actually, it was a little controversial. Matt Cochran called out a trainer, and I understand why he did. But so you talked about it as backward conditioning for obedience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use backward conditioning ever.
Yep.
But I have once.
Okay.
Here's what it helped with. So it helped from an emotional side for a dog. So for whatever reason, and I have like a Chihuahua mix, shelter mix, but she doesn't look anything like yours. She's a Dachshund Chihuahua. That's what they say.
Oh my gosh.
And she was terrified of my mom.
Mm.
So I use backward conditioning in this sense. And this is one case study, but it worked.
Yep.
So the dog was on the couch, but I would put the e-collar on. I tap, 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 and I brought her closer to my mom. And when do you think the pressure turned off?
When she got close to your mom.
When she got close. Yeah, we might have done that rep 3 times. But what I just wanted to do was change, like kind of like create like a little gap in her mind to be like, hey, that's that thing you're afraid of. Maybe just be a little more open-minded. Now, my mom, I still was like, you got to take her for walks. She's off leash trained. Just go in nature, whatever. You still have to do all of that. But it worked. Like she loves my mom. And in general, it's really actually helped. Lucky is her name. She's over here. This is her. Maybe I'll call her over. It helped. It really worked from the emotional side. So I didn't use backward conditioning to teach sit because I actually think that's silly. But from an emotional side, it was really cool. It was really cool to see that change. It changed like that.
Yeah, and I totally like that's actually a lot of what I do with puppy. They get startled with something, and I'm just like, I'm going to block you with the leash, and there's pressure in you trying to escape, so you're going to try to come forward instead, and then they realize it's a fucking fire hydrant or whatever. It's not actually going to hurt them. And they have a good experience with it, or at least neutral.
Sure.
I would argue, though, that like that might not necessarily be backwards conditioning, right?
Because there's no command?
Yeah, or like I think we don't necessarily know what the dog is taking as the cue. And my guess is you were probably like talking to her, or your mom was being like even your mom sitting down on the couch could have been the cue for like, hey, the game is on, and now you have to decide whether to approach or avoid, and then we're going to have whatever consequences.
It was encouraging her to come this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like, I think this is where people get a little bit like tangled with the backwards versus forward conditioning, because I think even like when backwards conditioning does work, there's probably something either the dog is just interpreting it as non-contingent for a couple reps, which like at the end of the day is probably not the end of the world. If you're doing it for like the dog's life, then it probably is like, but probably the dog is at some point going to make an association. Like, let's say you're doing backwards conditioning for recall, and every time the dog gets 50 feet away from you, you go stim and call the dog. Pretty soon the dog's going to be like, hey, every time I get 50 feet away, I get stimmed and then call. Like that, the distance then becomes the cue for the recall. You know what I mean? So it's like, the dog is probably going to, because they are prediction machines. I mean, we are too. They're prediction machines that are going to find something salient and consistent, because it's unlikely that we are actually being completely unpredictable. Like, we try to do this with variable reinforcement schedules, and we can't. Like, the dogs always tell the truth about like barking in IGP is the thing, right? So like people will try to vary the number of barks or the steps of healing, like pick whatever behavior that's got duration on it. And you'll see the dog, like people will be like, oh, I'm randomizing it. But then it's like 25 steps and then 50 steps and then 10 steps. So like we'll pick kind of an interval that our brain likes, like a rhythm. And then the dog, like you'll see them start to pattern that. And it might be a couple different points, but they're still picking up on some pattern. So to truly be variable and not predictive and therefore not contingent, I think is actually kind of hard to do, which is why the studies on e-collars are so frustrating to a lot of us, because it's like nobody does non-contingent shocks. Like we all think that that's fucking stupid. Nobody is contesting that. It just doesn't happen in the real world.
Why do you say that? So you mean like explain that, because I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to misinterpret it myself.
Yeah.
I think that my audience might as well.
Yeah, like I don't think there's anyone going around being like, oh, I want my dog to recall to me, and then randomly being like, all right, I'm going to stim you. And then the dog comes back and you're like, okay, cool. And then the next time you're like, okay, I'm going to randomly shock them, but then not tell them to come. I'm just going to tell them nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, people just aren't out there doing that kind of stuff. Like at least, probably at the very least, they're like changing the rhythm of their walking, or even like cutting their leg. Like it doesn't even have to be anything like that salient, but I guarantee you, I've had this experience with many, many dogs where I'll be like, oh shit, I'm creating a pattern where I slow down to recall them and they start recalling when I slow down, right? Or pick whatever sport behavior. Like there's we call it like a build up for the motion exercises in IGP. So you take 10 to 15 steps and then you sit your dog or down your dog or stand or whatever. And they absolutely start to figure out like, okay, there's a certain number of steps and then we do this. Like you're going to be, or you change your pace just slightly. Like people are always handler helping their dogs accidentally without even knowing. Like a big part of my job as a sport coach is to be like, hey, your hand is like doing this when you think it's doing that, and just pointing that out to people. So we're constantly like telegraphing to our dogs what we're thinking and what our expectations are. So it's just like, it's so unlikely that we're not giving our dog any information or any change, and just like completely blank face, shocking the dog, and then having an expectation in our head that we're not communicating.
I actually just had this conversation with a client today, and like,
yeah,
I always ask my client, I do just pet dog, so I don't know anything. I say like, what's the best tool? Or what's the tool that I want you guys to use? And no one really gets this, but it's your voice or your body language. Yep. And I try to explain to them because what I go, if they can't master the leash, they can't really master the e-collar. But I try to get them to understand they're basically the same thing. Yes. Right? You just have to ask your dog to do something. Mm-hmm. Pause. The pause is so hard for people. I never actually realized how hard it is. And like, yes. I think even like 3 seconds, like maybe it needs to be like a really you need to tell them longer and just wait. Mm-hmm. Kind of watch what your dog does.
Actually, side tangent, but this is the funny thing. Like in IGP, it's like you're supposed to do like a front and then count to 3 and then finish your dog. And the amount of times I'll tell someone like count to 3 and then finish your dog, and it's like 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, dude, like 1 Mississippi, 2, like just.
Why do you think people have such a rush?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think it's a lack of trust. I think it's a lack of trust.
Probably. Yep. They want to micromanage.
Yeah, like if you go out with your dogs a lot, like you might recall them and sometimes they flip and come back. And sometimes they might like finish their smell and then flip and come back. Like the dog's still processing. Like you don't have to be in a rush. And I know that if I'm like, if it blows me off, like I always
you can feel it. Yeah.
You feel like that's my wish for pet dog trainers and just anyone in general is just ask for something and pause. And I really urge people to pause more before applying whatever it is, reinforcer, food, toy, whatever it is.
Yep.
And that actually goes to play too. Like, people get so like they'll out their dog, the dog comes by, like spaz out. Just let the dog do that. Let him make that choice. Just be like, no, wrong, stop, whatever word you use. Like that's probably the biggest thing. If I would say how I've evolved as a trainer, that's helped me a lot. It's kept my like central nervous system probably calmer too. Was just being like, chill out, pause, give it a few seconds.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you made a point too that like, what's the best tool, like e-collar versus pinch, and like it is that, right? Like it's just a delivery mechanism to reinforce what your voice said. And like the mechanism of delivery doesn't really matter.
What's your negative reinforcement marker? What do you teach?
So I say that it's but I'm not horribly consistent about it. Like my joke with my students is like, do as I say, not as I do, because a lot of times it is tonality for me. So like, nope, like that's negative reinforcement. And then no is like, all right, that's punishment. You're in trouble. Or phooey for my personal dogs. It's just like old German habit.
I couldn't do it to Kim, but one of my clients came to me and they're like, there was this cute golden retriever at the vet, and anytime that like he was kind of like pulling towards us, his trainer told him oops. So for like a week I wanted my negative reinforcer to be oops, but like it just couldn't. Like how cool.
It doesn't come out naturally.
It doesn't come out naturally, but like oops.
Yeah. So the Midwest thing is that's always what I say when
it's softer than like but like most clients that come here that struggle with like getting their dog to do anything, because the dogs jump up on people and then they'll say off, right? Like everyone's online, like they'll say off, and I'm like, okay, so what happens? What do you say when they don't say off? When they don't jump off? And they're like off, and I'm like, but you took tests in school, like you get a check or an X. Okay, so when he jumps off, he gets pet or a treat. How does he know when he doesn't do or she doesn't do the right thing? And I swear they don't get it, even after I came from that analogy.
Yeah. I think actually something that this is a little bit side tangent to negative reinforcement, because in the same I do have a marker for negative reinforcement, but also you just get kind of like a one Mississippi to either comply or not.
Sure.
So especially with sport dogs, like out, like that's it, like out, beat it. So if you don't beat it, you just get negative reinforcement. I'm not marking that. I'm not reminding you. It's just like there is a period of latency that I'm going to hold you to. Like once it's finished, right?
I understand.
Or that the negative reinforcement is going to start, and then I might help you. But I will repeat commands after I start to help the dog with negative reinforcement. And like that might be a little bit sloppy, but the way that I kind of conceptualize it is the first one's free. Like I can say out, or let's say off, right? I can say off. And then if you're going to make me repeat it because you weren't paying attention to what I told you, you're going to have to pay for that. Like there's going to be an aversive that comes, or I remind you what it was you were supposed to be doing. Yeah. So it'd be like off. And then if the dog doesn't do it, I'm starting the negative reinforcement, or like you can mark it, whatever. And then I'm like off. Because like, hey, dummy, you clearly weren't listening. Like if you're not solving the problem after a couple of seconds. So, and I think like to me, and then you see this especially in sport dogs, like I think the dog starts to realize that they have to stay in a state of arousal or cognition, or however you want to label it. They have to stay in their head enough to pay attention to the word that you're telling them.
No question.
And then you start not like having to sort of help them so much. But
here's the thing.
But yeah, that tends to help with pet clients, because I'm like, hey, at least make them pay for it if you have to repeat it.
So to have a clean out, Yes, you want to say it once and then one Mississippi and then pressure. No questions asked for clean. Once it's finished. But here's what would happen with pet dog owners. Because they don't want to deliver the pressure. You know this.
Yes.
They never want to deliver the pressure. So if you gave them the option to repeat off, they would repeat it 14 times, and then there would be no pressure, and then the dog would stop, and they'd be like, see, he stopped.
Yeah.
So the is for the human, not for the dog. I understand it's not the right way to train the dog. Like, it should be off and then pressure. Like, I'm not telling you a million times once you know what it means, right?
Yeah.
But for the human to understand the concept of, like, you ask them to do something, wrong answer.
Then you penalize. Yep.
Then you penalize. I have clients, I can't believe they do this. Like, they'll say off, and then they pick up and show the dog the e-collar. And then they'll be like, the dog got off. And like, I didn't even have to tap him. They're like so proud. I was like, you don't. I don't. Think, I don't think you guys.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things too with clients where I'm like, hey, like, think about just like ripping the Band-Aid off and then you don't have to pester your dog, but like, it's really hard. Like, like you say, like, people don't want to correct their dogs, which is great, but also it's a disservice to them that they're not. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's great that people like are kind-hearted, and have a little bit of an aversion and have to cognitively understand why it's the better way. But because it is like, okay, if I'm able to deliver an aversive, once or twice or however many times, right, Charles, it takes to get the dog to understand it, then I can allow them all this freedom. People like don't understand that that's kind of the social contract that they're making.
You probably never ever have to do anything, any corrections, whatever words you want to use. I don't even know the right words anymore, because you've said you've had repercussions, and I'm sure your clients even did this. They're so good with you, Kim.
Yep.
When you're here, they listen so well, and I'm like, yeah, because of the method I told you. It's not like I'm some kind of dog whisperer.
Magic. Yep. Like, it's funny too, because one of the things that I notice is like people start to get frustrated with their dogs, and like I don't, and I'm like, I don't have a massive amount of patience. I just have a system that I follow, and it works. Like, I know that it's going to work. So like, you too can just solve your frustration by following the system, and it will go away. Like, the negative reinforcement will work. You will resolve your frustration and get reinforced.
You ever get frustrated with clients? Like, this is like a friend. So she has a dog who she was aggressive, but like aggressive in the sense of like, she wasn't mean-hearted, but if you put a collar on her, she learned that she could bite you and your hand would go away. If she didn't like something, she would bite you. Like, it wasn't like a nip, but it was some, you know what I mean? But she's not a mean-spirited dog.
Yeah. She was just like correcting the owner and figured out that it works.
I can get you out of here.
Yeah.
And like, we'll go through the exercises. She'll even do the exercises, and then she'll bring her to work, and it's like a really high stakes environment. She runs a gym. Like, she'll like revert back to her bad habits, and then just start like texting me like, I have to take her home. She's like going crazy. She's not listening. And I'm like, and then she sends me a video of her working the dog in the parking lot. The dog's 100 yards away in a downstay. The dog pops up. She says, The dog lays right back down. Then she takes her to the gym, and she just like kind of loses all of, like I said, like when she barks at people, at least try the because it works.
Yeah.
You get frustrated with clients when like, or is that just
yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of just accepted it. It's like part of the job. Like, this is gonna sound a little bit shitty, but I don't mean it this way. But like, I try not to get too emotionally invested in my clients in that way. Like kind of what I was saying before is like, we're all adults. You're making your own decisions on what you're willing to put work into, what you're prioritizing. I think what's interesting about that, though, is she probably is struggling with her own levels of arousal, right? So when she gets kind of amped up or distracted or whatever, then suddenly all that learning goes out the window. So then it's like, okay, she has to kind of...
And she knows that
there's probably a strategy there.
And after the she might have to use the e-collar, but her clients are there, and she doesn't want to hear her dog kind of yell.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. People are really afraid of like making their dog look sad in front of other people, which is a whole interesting societal thing too. But yeah, like that that kind of stuff. I try to look at it as more of a puzzle. Like the reason I love dog training is because it's a complex puzzle that's always different depending on the dog. Its underlying true principles. And I try to look at people the same way. It's harder sometimes, right? Dogs are a little bit easier to kind of keep that frame of reference of just like benevolence, I guess. But yeah, sometimes it can be interesting to be like, okay, how do we solve this problem for you? Like if, and like kind of that line of questioning of like keep asking why, like, okay, you don't want to, or you're not doing this thing, why? And then, okay, I don't have the e-collar with me. Okay, why? And then is it actually a logistics thing or is it an emotional thing? And like, what's the angle that we kind of have to go at to attack that? But again, like I definitely run out of energy a lot of days and I'm just like, all right,
it is what it
is. That's fine. You do you. Yep. Like the dog isn't a danger. It's just a little bit of a nuisance, whatever, you know, but it's hard. That's the hardest part of being a dog trainer for sure.
I have a question for you. So I love black shepherds, black German shepherds. I have black female German shepherds, if I'm being specific, and I'll go even one step further. I love when they're like kind of like mal looking. I don't love the big block.
Interesting. I'm the opposite. Big blocky sable male. That's my vibe.
Fine. What has happened to the shepherd from an athletic and like a structural standpoint? Like, I'll leave it to you to tell me.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, in like most selective breeding endeavors, whether it's honestly like livestock or purebred dogs, but especially purebred dogs, we tend to hypertype and breed for the extremes. So like with the show lines, that's kind of what has happened is there was a focus on conformation and this idea of like the trot and like that version of locomotion and optimizing that. And then that created this really extreme angulation, oftentimes like sort of looser ligamentation. I find it to be aesthetically not very pleasing. I think it's like a lot of people think like, oh, those dogs are going to have worse hips. That's not actually true. It's more of a, like, it's not that they have hip dysplasia. It's just the angulation. Like their bones are different, but it doesn't mean they necessarily have hip dysplasia, but they do move differently. They struggle with certain types of athleticism for sure. And then you also, like, when you focus on temperament, or on conformation, you start to sort of lose temperament, right? Like we can't, the idea of the universal German Shepherd is great, but it's pretty unrealistic to maintain. You can't optimize everything. But there's another quote that I'm going to butcher, but like you can't, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want, right? So you can have a dog that looks aesthetically a particular way, but if you have to hyper focus on that, you're going to end up making compromises in other aspects. Like it's just impossible. There is no such thing as a perfect dog. And even too, like certain traits are maladaptive in one environment, adaptive in another. Like genetics are not, like we tend to kind of value label traits, and that's not really a great way to look at it. Like the kind of classic analogy of it is like a cactus in the desert is super well adapted, but you put that in the rainforest, it's going to die. Like all of those traits are maladaptive. So anyway, so like there's the show line working line split. And so the show lines tend to focus on a certain aesthetic. You lose some workability and temperament aspects, and then the working lines, you focus a lot on temperament and drive. And I think my current beef with the German Shepherd breeding is that we're hypertyping temperament and drive in a way that tends to make dogs a little bit too nervy. Like we're losing some stability in the breed because nerve, it's like we were talking about negative reinforcement and activation before. It's a lot easier to make icy negative reinforcement with a dog who's a little bit thinner nerve and make really flashy obedience, nice aggression in the bite work, that sort of thing. So it's easy to go a little bit too far in that. And I think we need to be really, really careful about mistaking nerve and arousal for drive. That's kind of a whole another tangent. But yeah,
German Shepherds, I mean, they're probably the best or the second best service dogs, right? Like therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky because, like, I think a lot of times they do tend to have a little bit too much energy and drive. Like, even the labs that are used, as far, like, again, this is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but I think even the labs that are used are typically not like the field line labs. They're more like the show line, like bench bred or whatever the term is. I'm not a lab person. It's probably not the right term, but yeah, like they tend to be like really stable, easygoing dogs, but like move a little bit more slowly and like still have motivation to do things, but it's not like the problem with working German Shepherds and like service aspects is that even if it's not nerve, like even if they're not too easily stimulated by like a car door closing and alert sort of annoyingly on that, like that kind of stuff, they even can get, like they see a squirrel, right? And like that kind of stuff, or even like you're trying to train them with positive reinforcement and you use some food and they're just like, just like go absolutely nuts. So it can be a little bit trickier to kind of like balance that out and hit the sweet spot. But yeah, like they should be clear-headed. Like they shouldn't be fear biters. They shouldn't be overly reactive. Like they're going to go through stages because they do have that in them. But like, yeah, it's sad when I see a lot of the like pet bred shepherds that have enough confidence and drive and forwardness to be willing to bite, but weak enough nerve that they perceive everything as a threat. Like that is the worst combination. And that's unfortunately, like, to your point of like what's happened, that's kind of what's happened. It's that we've taken a working breed. I mean, Malinois are unfortunately kind of going down this road as well with their popularization. They're a dog that their sort of innate response to pressure and threat is to go forward and bite. And so in order to get a dog that is safe in society, they need to have an accurate threat perception system, right? And a dog with really thin nerve that holds a lot of anxiety and like inner sort of tension, they're going to perceive your mom sitting down on the couch and reaching and petting them as a threat. And that's going to become a bite. Or kids getting a little bit, too in their space, stuff like that. And that then becomes a massive problem. And those are difficult dogs for like the average family to live with, because the mistakes you're going to make with a lab are not going to have the same bad outcome, because the lab we might look at the lab and be like, his mental health could be better. He's kind of a little shut down. He's kind of stuck in appeasement. And it's a little bit like, not optimal. But the dog's not going to bite. Like a German Shepherd, a Malinois, little dog, right? Like any of these herding dogs, they're going to bite in that situation. And that's the unfortunate, where you're seeing a lot of them sort of get themselves into trouble. But yeah, and then like also too, the blocky look, that has been hyper-typed as well. So like I like a good like male that looks masculine with like a nice like full chest, big head, masculine head, like good like sort of classic German Shepherd. But you also are starting to see German Shepherds that have like jowls and like almost like have too much skin and start looking almost like chow, right? Where it's like, this is also not like, now we've gone off the deep end on that too. So people just go for extremes.
Are you ever thinking, because you grew up with German Shepherds since you were 13, would you ever get a Mal or a Dutch?
I probably would. I actually am super curious about crosses. I had actually one of my current dog's sister had an oops litter with the lady's very, very nice Dutch Shepherd. So it ended up being like a really nice oops litter. And I'm like, man, these are like actually some pretty cool puppies. which kind of was like
German
made my
Shepherd
gears
Dutch.
turn a little bit. German Shepherd Dutch, yeah.
That's cool. That'd be a cool mix.
Yeah. And like they're spicy, they're a little hot, but they're fun dogs. But they're like in PSA, it's a little bit more common to see like sport purpose mixes. IGP, it's very much like pretty rigid German Shepherd, or at least like purebred Malinois, purebred Rottie, whatever. So you don't see so much the crosses, but I think living with German Shepherds, I kind of always will prefer. I like the sort of classic, almost like sentimental version of the stoic, loyal companion, the very utilitarian dog. I think Malinois for me, just like they're a little too sometimes. This sounds like so weird to say, but like the flavor of a German Shepherd, like the energy of a German Shepherd is just like, it just fits me. And the Malinois that I'm around, like I appreciate them for their working qualities, but like we just don't vibe like on that level. Like it's just kind of a flavor preference thing. But I would find it fun to work with one, but I would have a hard time owning one, I think.
You'd go out to dinner, but you wouldn't want to move in.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. I apologize, guys. I actually cut Kimberly off in the beginning after she did, 13. She worked with Schutzen. Take me, so like your origin story, because I was just thinking, I was like, who were your early mentors, right? So you grew up in like the traditional kind of like Yank and Crank era, but then, you found Ivan's DVD, if I remember correctly, or someone gave it to you. So then you brought play to the club, you brought a clicker to the club. And then how did that evolve? What happened after that?
I'm trying to think. Some of that stuff is like hard to remember. Like my like time perception of like my early years, like I almost have to like sit down and like sort of reprocess it. Yeah. But I just did a lot of self-study. And a lot of it was European trainers, trying to think, like even Mia Skogster, Peter Shirk, Marco Cosconsal, like he moved to the States now. But those kind of even trying to think though, like who was actually putting out content in that day and age. I'm like having a little bit of a hard time thinking of it. But
okay, can I ask you about two of those?
Yeah.
Two of those were really interesting. So Peter Shirk, I invited him on the podcast. He said, Andrew, I don't speak English. What are you talking about? He's German. But Mia, let's talk about, what did you learn from Mia?
Yeah, I think is just like a very innovative trainer. Like a lot of techniques that people use in IGP. And I kind of mentioned this is true of Ivan, where like people just don't realize that like Ivan is a bigger influence, even if they never learn directly from him. Like there's a lot of like propagation down. And I think Mia's the same, where there's a lot of stuff that she was doing that was just like unique and very interesting, like very clever. Like even how she teach the dumbbells or the send out, like just kind of, she'd do different stuff. And I always found that really cool and interesting. Like she just doesn't really give a fuck what anyone else is doing or thinking. She's like, I'm going to do what works and kind of keep chasing that innovation. And also I just, I really admire her relationship with her dogs. Like she is very, like when I talk about like the full spectrum of emotion, like Mia is very much that. And she talks about like, where a lot of people will talk about like technique of like, oh, here's, the reward position and stuff like that. She's like, here's the different voices you should talk to your dog. And really thinks about emotions. And that was kind of, I think the first like shift for me was caring or knowing how to care about the dog's emotions in a way that I wasn't really exposed to in my club. So seeing people do that in the online space. And again, I think the Europeans were like a little bit better at this early on. And IGP has emphasized emotions, like it's been a criterion judging.
Right.
And so that kind of pushed a lot of innovation in that direction, which is super cool. So those were kind of like my sport influences.
Do you
and
remember
then pet wise, yeah.
Do you remember the categories of voices? off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay, I know. I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think like it's definitely like basically she goes from like the praise voice of like, oh, I want to kind of activate my dog to like calm, soothing. So like a lot of people in tracking are like, yeah, go, and get like overexcited, and the dog's like, oh, and like that's not what we want for tracking.
The late night
or
radio
like even
voice. The late night radio voice for tracking.
Yeah. Yep. And then like obviously when you're like wanting to be disciplinarian, like the tone shift. So just that concept was interesting because again, like to kind of like explicitly call that out. Like that's the kind of stuff that she would focus on that I thought was kind of unique.
And it's more clear to the dog, Kimberly.
It's
so much more clear than the word. The words don't mean anything.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think like a lot of people in America were kind of like stuck in a little bit of that like kind of Skinnerian, like laboratory sterile kind of thing. Whereas Mia was like not that. So like even that contrast, almost less so than the like specific things, like the contrast of her being in that way and pointing those things out and highlighting them and drawing attention to them was really, really interesting. And then, yeah, like kind of more in my career. So I like did the whole thing of like went to college, tried to get a corporate job, ended up hating it. I don't actually do well with bosses and authority figures, which I think is most of us dog trainers. And then I've only been.
We are authority figures to our dogs.
Yes.
The irony is not lost.
Yes. Yeah. It's I think for me, like I had a hard time seeing that people did stuff very badly. I worked very briefly in the pharmaceutical industry, and there were just things that I saw that ethically I was like, dude, this is bullshit. And got myself in trouble for saying that. But anyway, it's more like that. It's not necessarily that I have an issue with like fair and good authority, but people just don't practice that in life. But yeah. So then like as a professional pet trainer, my kind of like big like eye-opening experience was going to a Jay Jack seminar, and I went with a friend who also does sport. And we were sitting there watching him do like his steal your dog game and like a couple other exercises. And we were like, this is bite work. Like this is secondary obedience for IGP. And Jay was like, yeah, like you guys do all of this. It's just that I'm putting a different label on it or a different like use for that drill. And that was what like really started to kind of give me permission to start exploring the fact that like, oh, I don't have to do pet dog training in this sort of like boxed in way of like, oh, we just have to kind of crank out these, these lesson guides or these board. Yeah. And you can start using play and using, yeah.
For people listening who don't know the steal your dog game, could you explain?
Yeah. So basically, you're playing with your dog, and then helper, like not a decoy helper, but just like an assistant is making distractions with your dog. And actually, so it's funny to not get too sidetracked, but Jay is a student of Ivan's, like before even like the formal TWC program. And like this was in Ivan's DVD, the Steal Your Dog. Like that's what was really funny about it and why it was like such a full circle moment for me. Cause I was like, oh, like Ivan just didn't call it that, but he was doing exactly that 10 years ago before I saw Jay do it. But basically what it is, let's say you're playing tug with your dog and someone's like kind of tossing a Frisbee up in the air and your dog is like, oh, I would prefer to go do that game. And you just tell your dog, nope. And you let the dog go see that as soon as he gets over to that person with the Frisbee, they just kind of stonewall him. And they like don't let him have access to that toy or actually play with them. And the dog's like, oh shit, I thought that was gonna be really fun. Mom told me it wasn't, and then she was telling the truth. And then the dog looks at you like, what's going on? And you go, yep. And you present the tug and you start playing again and sort of rinse and repeat. And the dog starts to look at these competing motivators as sort of a part of the game where it's like, oh, you're trying to get me to fuck up now, actually. Like, you're trying to distract me off of this thing. And they end up sort of committing harder to the game. So it's a way to sort of build play in general, but then also to teach your dog to concentrate on the task and then build engagement and build the value of play.
The funny thing is you're dissuading the dog in addition. It's a negative punishment.
Yes. Yep. And you're sort of charging up your punishment marker then in that way too. So if I do say, hey, that squirrel's not for you right now, the dog is like, okay, I can accept that because I've seen this elsewhere. So like a lot of
it didn't get me
stuff is exactly. Yes. Yep. And a lot of Jay and Ivan's stuff are using play as a proxy for real life scenarios. And that's what I was kind of like missing with connecting my sport dog stuff to my pet dog stuff. Because it's like, oh, it's the same. You're just, the application is different. And then also I started applying some of like Ivan and Jay's stuff. Like Jay just had more accessible content at the time, like his Patreon and podcast and all that stuff, but teaching the dogs to turn off. And I started to apply that to my sport dogs. And I was like, oh, this feels a lot more balanced and sort of a better, well-rounded way to live with the dogs. Because I'd been kind of raised in the tradition of like, put them in the kennel, take them out to work, put them in the kennel, and then you end up getting a dog that sees you and spikes into arousal because they're like, I always do only high octane, high drive fun things with you, which is great. But I also want to have the ability to just enjoy my dogs in sort of a peaceful environment as well. And that was not common in the sport tradition. Like back to Fabian's point, right? Of like, I don't want my dog to see me as the bad guy. Like he does want a very hyper specific relationship with his dog, which is fine. Like there are people that are very, very high level sport competitors that live with their dogs that way and are very successful.
He actually made a point that he doesn't live with his dogs. The dogs are in the kennel.
Right. Yep.
Until they're retired, they don't come in the home.
Yep. Yep. So that's the kind of relationship that you then get. And like, again, everyone can make their own choices. There's pros and cons to all of that. But for me, like, it's not, I want to have to live with my dogs. So
my pet dog clients, creating their dog during the day when they're home is a battle. So, like, no shot that's working.
No, yeah. And that is a very, like, sport working dog thing, which, again, it is fine. But, yeah, like, it's not, doesn't have to be that way. Like you can still be very successful in sport and have your dog also live in the house and know how to chill, know how to turn off. And I think it's better for their overall well-being to have like an ebb and a flow in various environments, which like, again, dog goes back in the kennel. That's their downtime. You can definitely generalize that. I think more than like, a lot of people would be surprised, I think, how fluent dogs can actually be with that kind of stuff. But
can you take us home with this? Tell me about how you and Dylan started the podcast, a little bit about the podcast, and maybe some things you learned about Dylan, the dog training industry as a whole. That's
a good question. The podcast, like I said earlier, kind of just started. I'd started just chatting with Dylan online, just about various things. I would like ask him some clarifying questions and just kind of started talking. And we'd have like long conversations, and I was like, why not record this? So I kind of like broke them down over time, and it was like, hey, this is just an unrecorded podcast. And just started it again in the effort to kind of help people understand a little bit more deeply the nuanced long-form conversation of that good stuff. I think what was most surprising to me was I didn't actually know how bad the dog training industry was, because I never followed, like the most like pet guy that I followed was Jay, and everybody else was sport dog people that might have a pet business on the side, but like they weren't, like I still can't really name like the big players in the pet dog industry because they just like, they weren't in my algorithm, and they weren't really visible to me. So then I'm like, well, okay, it's like a whole other facet of this industry.
Is this aside from like Larry, Jay, and Ivan?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because like to me, like Ivan's a sport guy. He is obviously just like an all-around dog trainer and has influenced the pet industry a ton. But like I was introduced to him as world championship IGP guy, like that Malinois breeder, like that was my sort of idea of him. And Larry, like I honestly wasn't aware of, which again is kind of funny because he has a ton of followers, but like,
and he does a seminar with Jay.
Yeah, so like actually the seminar I went to with Jay was one of the Larry Joel Jay seminars, but I was going for Jay, and then I was like, oh, like Larry has like no shade on Larry, but like he just wasn't in my circle of trainers that influenced what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And I forget how I even like became aware of Jay, to be honest. But like he felt a little bit more crossover because he would say that he learned from Ivan. So then I was like, okay, that's interesting. Whereas Larry was more just like
pet dog,
kind of standalone. Yeah, like he started in pet dogs, is in pet, like just like was kind of siloed there. So just didn't have any crossover or overlap. But yeah, so like those guys that are more like now kind of integrating both, like I kind of don't put into that category, but like I wasn't aware, like I was aware of them, right? But like the big box, like dog train, like the sort of like off leash canine, and like again, I'm like trying to think of even other trainers, but like those, when people Google dog trainers, like that's who they're coming up with. Sit means sit, right? And it's like that facet of the industry I was like aware of, but I didn't realize like quite how problematic it was. And then obviously too, all of like the force-free stuff, I was like vaguely aware of it, but I didn't realize like how much it was actually influencing everyday dog owners. I thought it was just like, oh, this is like these weird factions that exist in an online space, which is like very naive of me, because like of course the online space totally affects our daily lives constantly now. Like you said, with social media, like you can't not have it with a business and you can't really escape it. So like, of course.
You're right though, like the force-free positive only impacting everyday owners on one extreme, and then sit in that crew on the compulsive side.
Yeah. And everything's obedience, everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And like, that's the only thing that people are seeing. And like, I just didn't realize that. So I was like, wow, why is Dylan so angry? And then like started to have more conversations with him, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I get now, like who your audience is, or like not whose audience is, but like who he is reacting to and why it's so upsetting to him. And I'm almost like, damn it, like now I know. It is depressing.
And he never brings it up, but he worked with, like, he doesn't talk about like his pre-TWC days.
But it was off leash, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like 99% sure, yeah. Maybe I should cut that part. Maybe he doesn't want people to know. I don't think he cares. I think he just doesn't bother to name it.
But he doesn't like bring it up that often.
Yeah.
When did everything become obedience? Because I'm like you, Kimberly, I missed it. So I never went that route. For maybe it's just like sometimes you're fortunate, right? Who you find.
Yeah.
So my stuff was never obedience. In fact, I got a dog so I would never have to teach it obedience. I just wanted it to be all free. And my mentor, virtual, never met him, was Stoney Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
No one really talks about him, but he's basically obstacle courses, pack walks, obstacle course, pack walk, confidence building pack walk, like a school. So the same as you with both force free. I was like, what are these people? These are lunatics. And then I was like, wait, some people try to solve behavior with obedience. That's never going to work. Those are two completely different things. Okay. And you know, I had a few TWC trainers, and only after talking to them did I understand why they were so frustrated with the industry.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the frustration. I was like, okay, these people are weird.
Yeah.
But they like, now I understand why they're frustrated. have these two sides.
But I think people feel lied to as well, you know? Like I think they feel misled. And I think that's very, very frustrating. Like the sort of typical experience, like my experience is also atypical, as is yours, just in a different way. I was a sport dog trainer that got pretty into pet dog training. Like I'm pretty interested in it now. And it takes up a large amount of my mental space. But most dog trainers are people that had a really problem dog, went out and sought help, didn't really find sufficient help, and kept trying and trying and trying, and then found themselves getting so into it because they were trying so hard to solve their own problem and found it interesting, of course, and all these other things. But then they have to scrape and claw their way to good information. And it sucks that in the age of information that's the way that it has to be. Like that's almost a little bit jaded about the sport world because I had that experience in sport world where I had to like really fight to get good information and to get good training. And really do hold quite a bit of resentment for being misled, especially as a kid. And I think that's how a lot of trainers feel is they're like, and why, again, like back to Dylan is sort of the archetype of it, why he gets so upset with leaders in the industry not sort of validating that experience a little bit more. Because it is super, super frustrating to have the experience of trying to get better, trying to be good at a craft, and then getting steamrolled by people online and nobody stands up for you. And then you're like, well, I must be wrong. And then you go try something else and it doesn't work. And then you're like, dude, what the fuck? Like, what is, like, it starts to be this sort of like mind bending, like gaslighty kind of experience. And I think that's where like a lot of the sort of anger and resentment has been built up over time, which is unfortunate. But like, again, it makes sense how we got here, you know?
Well, I come into all this stuff retroactively, right? So like if you kind of discover it like naturally, I don't know how you feel, so I can't share that experience, but like Denise Fenzi, right? So this is what I found out about this. Like I don't even know who this lady is. But then I'm like, wait, her dog just died in like her Tesla like a few months ago. Like, okay, why did she leave the dog in the car? Or at least check on her. Like okay. Then she got this like well-bred, and she does get some really nice looking dogs. And then she couldn't fix a reactivity in a basic shot, and she gave that dog up. And then there's this like video of like her body blocking, and then she's gonna tell people how to do reactivity. But I'm like, if you're gonna so I don't even blame her. Dylan made a good point. I'm like, if you listen to that person, you're an idiot. That's where I go with it, because like her credentials. If you want, I don't know if she does like agility work.
She actually does ring sport.
Ring sport. If that's
she did competitive obedience, or AKC obedience, and then a little bit of Schutzen, I think, and then ring sport now, I believe. Yeah, but like it definitely trying to do bite sports.
My dog can't do any of that stuff. My dog can't even. I don't know how to teach my dog how to backpedal on command. So like, if you want that, cool. But I promise you, like, my dogs don't react like that, and I don't try to body block them. Like that's so like, you know.
Yeah. And what's frustrating for me too is like the credentials of theoretically being successful in sport. There's a whole conversation about like how valid of a test that actually is. I think it can be a sufficient test for how good of a dog trainer you are, but there are plenty of sport dog trainers that are not actually, they cannot generalize their knowledge, don't understand principles, et cetera, et cetera. But then also like Denise isn't actually that successful. Like that's kind of the other frustrating thing. And like, I feel weird even saying that publicly because like I'm also a nobody in sport. But I think when you put yourself out there as an expert on all of these different things, it's like, okay, there is some expectation of showing your work, you know, right. Again, like Dylan's whole sort of points in all of this. And so that's what's kind of like, I've had conversations with other like balanced dog trainers that I really respect and will kind of rant about this. And it's like, you're not even a good dog trainer. You know what I mean? Like, there are even people that are trying to do force-free bite sports, like as an experiment, they're like moderately okay at it. Like have at least titled dogs somewhat reliably, not at a level that I would like personally like call, like they're not going to championships and stuff like that. But like,
how do they get a pit bull to out?
Because they're not working pit bulls. And you can,
that dog's not going to out.
You can highly control the environment though. And most shepherds, if you go dead toy to teach an out, they're like, okay, cool, we'll let go and then initiate the game again. And because in IGP, your drive, lock up, they're not having to out off of an active help. So the competing motivator is not, like it's there for sure, but you can really set up, I mean, let's even take Steal Your Dog as an example. Like you can get a really robust emitted game that looks very finished without ever using aversives. And like it probably is pretty finished to a degree if you don't like really stress test that. If you're very clean about it, have a good dog, all that stuff. So like you can get away with, I mean, it's why like with zoo animals that you can get a lot of interesting looking cooperative care stuff because the animal is hyper controlled and you can optimize all of the variables in order to make that equation work. If you're not competing against, correct. You're not competing against the random squirrel going to, you know, run out and now you called your dog and you're like, oh shit, I wasn't ready for that, whatever. But even like getting a pit bull to out,
favorite person with their favorite toy isn't coming out, or like the second favorite person or with the toys not coming out.
Right. But even to like to the point of like, how do you get a pit bull to out in a sort of a force-free way? Like I find this interesting is like what people also label as force-free. Like again, this is a whole nother tangent, but you can just like break stick a dog off a toy consistently, out break stick, and just block them. I don't know if people would call that force-free, but like could be effective, right?
That's not force-free.
Yeah, no, I don't know, right? But like, yeah. But there's like, I'm sure that there are people like playing with ideas like that. But yeah, so anyway, my whole point with that is like, there's people that at least are like, I can look at the craft of how they're utilizing positive reinforcement. And I'm like, okay, like I can see what you're doing. And that's interesting from the facet of like deeply exploring that idea, but they don't push that as an ideology. They don't try to make claims about the pet dog industry, all this stuff. And like, they're actually competent at the thing that they say that they're competent at. And I don't see that with Denise. Like, she's not staying in her lane. She's not even that competent when it comes to like, it feels very artificial. I think that's the frustrating, is that a lot of this game is who can present themselves in a way that gets attention and that gets views, right? And like that's what gets socially reinforced and then propagated. And then it's like, hey, let's actually like back this up a little bit. Like, how did we get here? And I think with Denise, like, not to just pick on her, but she was promoting positive reinforcement techniques right in that era. Like she was actually someone that I remember like reading her books and like stumbling across. And I did get some good information from her when I was younger. And so at that time, it was really innovative and new and some cool ideas. But then I don't think she kept up. Like I think she got really stuck in that idea and is almost having a reaction to the yank and crank bad dog training that now we're like, yeah, that's a horrible use of aversives. Like nobody is contesting that. But you're still arguing with this archetype from 20 years ago that doesn't exist. And it just doesn't land anymore. And like she hasn't kept up with even like good play techniques, to be honest, so it's just kind of weird that like it's like, okay, let's roll this back and like put the genie back in the bottle. How did we get here? I think she was relevant 20 years ago and has just stayed relevant because like social media, but like I don't really know
Kimberly,
exactly, but yeah.
Can I ask you, do you consider play positive reinforcement? And then I want to be vulnerable with you after. So play is positive reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not teaching anything though?
How do you mean? Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, like well, I'll be a little vulnerable, and then you'll riff
like what are you reinforcing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think actually more trainers should admit this. I realized my biggest vulnerability is I don't know how to use positive reinforcement. Mm-hmm. What I was really good at, why I've had success to whatever, is I was really good at negative reinforcement and play. Mm-hmm. But I never really taught behaviors with positive reinforcement. Like there were times I would just bring treats on the pack walks just because that day I was like, okay, like
I like snack.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm a great positive reinforcement. I would say I don't know anything. So if you maybe you could recommend someone to learn from. But when I did play, like when I took dogs out, it would be like I would play tag with them. Sometimes I wouldn't even have toys. I would push them and I'd run the other direction. And they'd chase me and then we'd kind of roll around. Like that to me felt more like I think it was relationship training or relationship, like hey, we're buddies, we're friends, than any real positive reinforcement. And then if they would go and like blow me off, I would say, hey, like I called you, you know what this means. So that was kind of like my my petri, my origin. Yep. And I was like, I should start teaching positive reinforcement. It could help me in a lot of ways. So one would be like, who do you think does do positive reinforcement really well?
So that's actually interesting to think about because I kind of make the assumption that people do know how to use positive reinforcement because I came from the sport world. And like that is definitely like how the pendulum swung, was very positive reinforcement based. Because you can get highly motivated, highly driven dogs do a lot of cool shit with positive reinforcement. But it almost swung too far. And I think now we're seeing people starting to go, hey, we lost the art of negative reinforcement and punishment and went too far down the rabbit hole of positive reinforcement. It's kind of interesting that it's like, I just realized like that was, that's sort of the assumption I'm making. Like that's kind of the like, the archetype I'm speaking to in my head. But yeah, I think like it's an interesting question because I'm trying to think like pretty much all of my recommendations would be like sport dog trainers. So like Canemo, Canemeo, they have a lot of just like a library of videos. It's very sport specific, but it's like you could definitely extrapolate the concepts. A lot of just like food training, different skills. And then I have to think who else, honestly.
Do they shape? Like, do they mark? Do they just let dogs do what they want to do, and then they mark the best behavior, or do
usually it's like guided shaping. I would say free shaping is not like super common, just because it can be difficult to do well, and inefficient, and also it's very easy for highly motivated dogs to get too frustrated, and like it's very difficult for new handlers to get right. Like even people will try to like shape retrieves, not even free shape, but like just shape retrieves and sort of capture hold, and it's really, really difficult. So it's more like luring is super, super common in the sport world. It's basically how pretty much everyone teaches heel, their positions, et cetera, et cetera. And then like sort of shaping in the sense of like, let's say you're teaching like a go out, a send out, you would have like a place board or a bowl or a target of some sort. So there's a lot of like luring and targeting, I guess. And then some shaping around that. Or like blind searches, a lot of people will like shape that by like going around a cone, and they'll sort of like walk towards the cone, and then the puppy interacts with it and you mark it, and like so on and so forth, and then build it off of that. So it's definitely not as sterile as free shaping, but it is that sort of flavor of stuff. But yeah, a lot of the positive reinforcement in the sport world, like it's hard for me to think of things to recommend because it is kind of almost implied.
Sure.
Like they'll tell you like, oh, reward your dog, but then that's kind of like up to you. But yeah, I think.
Do you still use a clicker or do you use a yes marker?
I use a yes marker. I like clickers. I forget shit all the time. Like half the time I'm like, where's my fucking leash? And I think too, like once you're good at it, a clicker isn't really super necessary. I also am in the camp where like I don't want my marker to necessarily be flat all the time. Like I don't mind signaling the package of like the value of the reinforcement to my dog via my voice. Like I don't think that's a bad thing. So there's like, I'll sometimes make clients use a clicker because I'm like, dude, you are not being clear. Like sometimes going like tactile versus verbal helps them to not muddy the waters. Just if I'm trying to get there's some technique, some mechanics a little bit cleaned up with something. Like they're doing so much hand or whatever. But
I hired a new girl. She's been like a helper, like an assistant trainer, I guess you'd call her, aspiring assistant trainer. She worked at a shelters for a while, and I've hired a few people in the past, and I started her with the clicker. Right, it's just such an easy like click reward versus like giving them that extra task of a marker. It's easier. It's more for the human than for the dog.
Yeah, because like we talk with our hands, like we go verbal and like hand motion at the same time. So like giving sometimes people are like, yep, and like do the thing at the same time, and that doesn't feel weird. Like that's kind of how our brains operate. But then if you go task A and then task B, that can make it like you're in the same sort of modality, and it's like step 1, step 2 instead of like pat your head, rub your tummy, you know. So it can kind of help them that way. But yeah. And then to your question of like, is positive reinforcement or is play positive reinforcement, and like what is rewarding? That is interesting because I think a lot of times like we do just kind of like open play because we're like, oh, we're in the backyard, I'm going to go have fun, or what, I went to the park to go have fun. And I think sometimes you aren't necessarily positively reinforcing a specific behavior. And also that question is interesting because it kind of speaks to the fact that like we do talk about operant conditioning in a bit of a vacuum, and it's like it's a scientific model that explains the world and helps us, but it is not actual reality. So sometimes it can be a little bit too limited. And like that's one of those things where it's like you can reward the dog or use a reinforcer without it having to be like that big of a deal. But I think like with play, what is really interesting, what people don't realize is they are creating a lot of really interesting social skills with play. And is one of the reasons that like we preach play, but I think sometimes it's easy to kind of see that and be like, oh, you're tiring the dog out, you're giving them an outlet, but like you're also teaching the dog to stay on task and to stay focused. Like that's a muscle that they have to build, that endurance and that stamina. You're teaching them to read social cues and like read the play of like, are you inviting me back right now, or are we doing a cradle or a victory lap? Like reading that sort of stuff. And then when are we done? And then, of course, you can like also throw obedience in there. Like out is, okay, now you have to listen to that, control your level of arousal and drive, and et cetera. But even the sort of like soft skills, it's like the same reason we put kids in sports, like teaching cooperation, teaching like this mental flexibility that I think that can kind of get overlooked. So like that almost was like what pops in my head is the answer of like, what are you reinforcing? You're almost reinforcing those sorts of aspects that aren't specific behaviors, but they're relational, like you said, they're relationship, but they're relational skills that do have criteria. They're just not super obvious, or like we don't verbalize them as criteria. But even like targeting, right? Like if my dog is not bothering to be careful or pay attention to like, oh, I'm holding the ball out here, and he's just like, fuck it, I'll go for your body. Like, hey, like that's not okay. And that would be penalized. But I wouldn't think of that as like the same way I would have criteria for my heel. I wouldn't think about like, oh, I'm teaching targeting. It's like usually it just kind of happens. But there's definitely stuff that we're like reinforcing and punishing constantly in play.
And even like that's such a good example, right? Like the targeting and mistargeting. If done properly, you're really teaching your dog how to be a little more thoughtful about life.
Yes.
Like
yes.
That's
play is teaching dogs to think in high arousal states. Like that's the utility. Yeah.
And like, hey, I didn't appreciate that, right? Like, where would you put that in the 4 quadrants? Like, sometimes, I mean, I don't like. Sometimes I'll be really pissed if you're kind of a jerk and you bite my hand. Yeah. But sometimes if you're like, oh, I made a little mistake, kind of like just.
I pulled a little soon. Like you zigged, I zagged. Like that was an honest mistake. Yep.
Right, and like now the dog's a little more sensitive and sensitive in the way of like being thoughtful of how their quick actions could impact humans. Like that's not a quadrant thing. It's a
Well, we do have a saying in sport where we talk about there needs to be a balance between drive and discipline, and I think that balance comes from aversive control. So like that, you probably could put that into a quadrant if you really want to. Again, like I think it's somewhat pointless, which is kind of what you're trying to say, but
this guy, this is actually this is my second dog, Buddy. He's a pitty.
Yeah.
I brought him to Dylan seminar and I brought him to Larry, and this just came to my mind. And I don't know how I taught him this, but he loved to play tug. He's a pitty. Like he's doing a lot. Like he actually will play tug at any time. That's a blessing, right? Like, you know, some dogs on and off. How he plays with me, and there was a young girl who came with her mom, and she played with Buddy. And one of the things I love is when Buddy barks in my face, bark command.
Yeah. Yep.
He wouldn't bark in her face.
And
like, how do you teach that? And he didn't tug as hard. Like he didn't rip the toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't teach him that. We've played a lot. There's been a lot of clients who bring their kids here. I've shown like the concept of obedience within play and listening. But like now that you mentioned that, it's just like I think he just developed that understanding of like, okay, Andrew plays
play matching. Yep.
Yeah, play matching. And that was cool to see she made that point. I didn't even think about it. That she's like, look how much gentler he's going with her than you. Yeah,
it's super cool. Yeah, and like that is a very nuanced skill to develop. Like I think that's kind of to your point. Like it would be very, very difficult to intentionally curate that in a very like sort of operant conditioning mental framework. Like you almost have to just like forget about it, play well, and like let it happen. But if you like try to fuck with it, you probably mess it up because they just are. That's their entire job, right? Is to study us and figure out how we work, and they do that really, really well.
This is why I never understood obedience for behavior modification, because the whole crux of it was Buddy had to be out of command and making choices. That's Buddy to behavior modify, because that is behavior modification. It's not from aggressive. And I was like, dude,
but again, like a lot of behavioral modification is like those soft skills, right? Like it is that, yeah.
So like I've had dogs come here. They've meet with a few trainers. I said this on Dylan's podcast when I had Dylan on. No one agreed with me. And I still stand by this. I stand by this so much. I said, anybody who's hiring a trainer should call the trainer up and ask him questions, but then say, great, I love what you said. Can I come and meet some of your dogs? And meet 5 trainers. I said this. Yeah. Nobody agreed with me. They said it was the most unrealistic thing I've ever heard. I said, in force-free, balanced, e-collar, whatever categories. Call 5 trainers. Okay, cool. Can I come by your facility and just meet some of the dogs you've trained? That needs to be standard practice. So, and I had a client here, Gambit, was like it kind of looked like this, but a cattle dog mix who like had 3 bites on his record.
Yep.
One trainer said that he would just have to be in obedience all the time. And I even went to this guy's Instagram page. I told them, guys, look at their Instagram page. Every photo on his Instagram page is a dog on a leash sitting by the owner. That's never going to fix this dog making better choices. It won't work. I'm not saying this is a bad trainer. I don't know this guy.
Right. But that's not the solution to that problem.
It will never work. I think that if I could leave the industry with one thing, is interview trainers and then ask them to see other dogs. Go there, go to the facility and say, I want to see how your dogs behave in this setting.
Yep.
And what they're selling you should be on display.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, again, like to Dylan's sort of not soapbox in like a shitty way, but like his whole point, right, is like we should be asking for portfolios of work, and I think that's a pretty reasonable to ask, you know. And like even I think people would be more forgiving of some, like I think people also get in this trap of perfectionism. I mean, I do it all the time. Like I definitely need to post more content. Like I'll send Dylan a video and I'll be like, oh, look at this. And he's like, why the fuck don't you post it? And I'm like, oh, this like one little thing went wrong. And he's like, you fucking moron. But I think we get stuck in this trap of like perfectionism and like, oh, but the dog missed this one command and my timing on the reinforcement was like not proper and yada yada. But like my clients don't, if they're not scrutinizing it on that level. But dog trainers could be real dicks to each other. You know? Like again, back to my earlier point about social punishment being used appropriately. I think it's used very inappropriately oftentimes.
Well, now Dylan has built up an army of people that will fight for him.
Yeah.
Whereas if you post it and you're like, I don't want to deal with it. You know, the ratios are still off. You have to.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And yeah, like Dylan is just someone who gritted his teeth and fought through that, which not everyone can, which is fine. But yeah, it's hard. But yeah, like I think that people look at posting content and think about dog trainers and posting for dog trainers, but it's like, no, just post for your clients. Like they're not going to care. Like you're not marketing to other dog trainers, you're marketing to your client. And that's what you need to kind of have in your head as you're posting those videos. And like, trust me, people are super impressed if the dog sits after 3 commands. You know what I mean? Like, because it's not the 14 that they were previously saying. So like, it's fine.
Kimberly, can you tell people where they could find you?
Yeah. Daredevil Dog Training is my Instagram handle. I'm not super active on social media. I really need to be. I keep it. It's so funny. This is like embarrassing. I made a post at the beginning of the year and I'm like, I'm going to post more content. And I've posted one fucking piece of content.
I know, right? You rebranded.
Yeah. I didn't do anything with it. But yeah, that's my Instagram handle. And then Facebook, Kimberli Weeks. My pet training business is Psyched Canine. That's more for like local people. And then, yeah, you can listen to the podcast that I have Jones at Naturally Aggressive.
Naturally Aggressive. And the premise is that most of these dogs that were deemed aggressive weren't actually aggressive. They were just poorly evaluated.
Yeah, well, and I think like the joke on Dylan's end, because what was my idea? I wanted it to be... my husband is like a very good at puns, and there was like one particular very punny name that I was like, oh, I want to do this, and then Dylan overrode me, and I was like, all right, I guess I have to compromise, otherwise you're not going to do a podcast with me. But I think the joke was like people will tell him like, oh, these dogs weren't that bad, and sort of downplay his results. So that's where that came from. But then also, yes, like I think there are a lot of dogs that get stuck in muzzles and obedience as management that aren't that bad. So yeah, it could definitely play both ways. But I think his motivation for the name initially was people kind of like accusing him of like, oh, but these were fine dogs to start with.
I interpreted it like the dog's on a short leash and a harness looking like it's trying to kill someone, and then you put it on a long line and it's just like a little bit of a frustrated dog that needs one pup.
And yeah, that's definitely true too. So yeah, there's multiple proper interpretations. So
I had a blast. Kimberly, thank you so much. Guys, subscribe, follow Kim. Thank you so much. Any final words before I let you go?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, it was fun.